So we're going to do our little Unity tutorial to catch anyone up who wasn't in class, or if you just need to use this as a refresher. So make sure you have Unity downloaded. In the group project, we're going to be working with this version, as you can see, but the most important thing is that if you're working on a group project with somebody, that you're all using the same version. And so then we're going to go to the Unity Hub. This is what you'll have downloaded, and we're going to create a new project. And we're going to do a 3D project and make sure you select the correct version, which is 2020.3.9 F1. And then we'll name the project. This is important so that you can find it later. So I'm going to name it Tutorial 1013. Alright, and I suggest making a Unity folder. I'm just saving this here because I'm going to delete it afterwards, but Unity saves files on your computer and you want to make sure you do not accidentally delete anything. So now I'm going to create project. This can take a couple minutes, so while that's starting, I'm going to show you Unity Learn. This is a good resource. I suggest using video tutorials as well. They're very easy to follow. But this does a good job of letting you know what you need to know. Sometimes it can be very hard to know what to Google and what to look up for a tutorial. So this gives you a really good introduction. This is just the Unity editor tutorial, and it gives you an overview of what everything does. Let's see, have we created a project? Not quite yet. Alright, so when we open Unity, we're going to see these different panels that make up the software. So I'm going to expand this. Over here, we'll see the hierarchy window. This is where you're going to have your different game objects, your camera. If you wanted to put in any like 3D object or something like that, like a cube, this is where you would do it. The screen is the scene view, so it's basically like the space you're working at. If you go right here and hit game view, that is what your user will see when they're playing your experience. The inspector window is how we edit and alter the game objects that we create in the hierarchy window. The project window is used for managing the scene, so it's where we create folders, it's where we create scripts, everything that we can then put into the hierarchy window or the inspector window. It's just for managing your project. And then up at the top, we have the toolbar, which will have all of the different things you can use to manipulate your scene, like panning, moving, scaling, rotating, all stuff like that. Let's see, all right. So now we have our Unity up, and the first thing we're going to do is do a little refresher. So hierarchy, remember, enter game objects, the scene, the game view, which is what the user will see, the inspector to edit hierarchy, and the project window, which will have all of your assets. So we're going to go into scene view and look at the camera. The camera is right here. You can move that around however you'd like, but what the camera is pointing at is what you're going to see in your game view. So let's create an object. To do that, we can either hit the plus up here, or we can right click on the hierarchy window and go down to 3D object and create a cube. Alright, so now we have that cube, and if we look in game view, I think I want it a little higher on the screen, so I'm going to raise it up. And you can kind of tell that the camera is looking at that part. Okay, and I don't really like the white cube, so I want to change the color. So to do that, we have to put a material on the cube, and we're going to do that by going into assets and creating a new folder. It's very important to keep everything organized, and we're going to name this folder materials. Go into materials, right click again, and we're going to create a material. Alright, and I want this cube to be purple, so I'm going to select purple, and now I have a purple material. I did that just by adjusting the color here. There are a lot of other things you can play around with on your own time. And then now that I have this material, I'm deciding I want the cube to be that. So I'm going to take it and just drag it onto the cube. And now my cube is purple. This is what the user would see. Very important to keep panning back and forth so you can keep track of your scene. Alright, so on the cube, right now all it has on it is a box collider. And the box collider is very important because what that does is it makes it solid so that objects can't pass through it, and so that's a very important thing to keep track of. You can edit the collider if you're like importing an asset or something and it's not quite right, like it's falling through half of it before it stops, but all the things that you enter on Unity will automatically be correct. So it's got the box collider, the material, and then we're going to add a component, and we're going to add a rigid body. You can search that in this little search bar up here, but it's already there. And the rigid body allows basically virtual physics to affect the object. So most important thing here is gravity. If we don't have a rigid body and we press play, nothing will happen. So now that we have the rigid body in our game view, we can press play, which is going to basically run whatever you have created in Unity. It can take a second. But see, it falls, but it's falling into an infinite void. If you look at it, you can see that it's just going to continue to fall forever. So I'm going to stop that. Make sure you hit this to stop, not this one. This only kind of half does it. Alright, so I don't want my cube to fall forever, so I'm going to put something underneath it. I'm going to create a 3D object, and I'm going to create a plane. This is my plane. I want it to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to use the scale tool in scene view, and I want to look up here so I can make it bigger, smaller. Another way to do that is to just go into this window, transform, and I'm going to just manually make it bigger. See? And so now, if I go to my game view, I've got this nice big landscape for my cube to fall on. And I also want that to be a different color, so I'm going to create another material. This time, I'm going to have it be green, so it looks like grass. Okay, beautiful. And I'm going to drag that onto the plane. And I'm going to rename this ground. Okay, so what happens if we press play? I invite you to guess. Now it stops. And it stops because the plane automatically has something like a collider on it, but the mesh collider right here, which allows the objects to collide and doesn't let the cube pass through it. So now that we have a cube that's falling onto the ground, I want to play a little bit more with the physics and also give you an opportunity to play around with things. So I'm going to create another cube here, and I'm going to name this ramp. And I'm going to take this into my scene view, and I'm going to move it up a little bit. And honestly, sometimes I like to look at this back and forth, and I'm going to scale it so that it's long, making sure I check the different axes to make sure I like how it looks. Beautiful. Okay, and then since it's a ramp, I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to move it into the position I want. Check my game view. I like how that looks. Okay, but this ramp has box collider. It's just white. I'm okay with it being white for now. Maybe I'll make it green too. Just drag that on there. And so now when I press play, my cube will roll down the ramp and onto the ground. So this is pretty easy to do. And so I stop. I'm going to delete this ramp because I don't need it. And I'm going to create it so that we can move the cube around. So I'm going to go back to Assets, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name it Scripts. And I'm going to open Scripts, and I'm going to double click or right click, and I'm going to create a C# script, and I'm going to name it Move Cube. Now, if you're following this tutorial, make sure that the name is completely identical. It's going to be important. You want Move Cube with an uppercase C. So now, you're going to go over to the resources I have in Canvas under the discussions page, little Intro to Unity resources. You can download Unity, you can find Unity Learn here, and also a download for Visual Studios. You need a code editor that can talk to Unity. I'm using Visual Studios. I recommend it. It's very easy to work with. If for some reason you have Visual Studios downloaded and your script is not opening up in Visual Studios, we want to go to Preferences, External Tools, and External Script Editor. We want to make sure that it's Visual Studio right here. You might have something else on your computer, but this is how you get it to open in Visual Studio. And once Visual Studio is downloaded, you can simply click on your script, double click, and it will automatically open Visual Studio. Ignore my messy desktop. Okay, so just give that a second to catch up. While that's opening, we're going to go back to the Unity resources and we're going to click the Move C# script. So move cube, we're going to copy it and go back over. This is now my move cube code, and this is C#. I'm not going to ask you to learn how to code. I'm going to ask you to learn how to integrate existing codes and allow them to work with Unity to help your projects. So we don't need any of this. We're going to delete it and just paste in the new code because it's exactly the same. Now, what is very important, your script will not work if this right here, move cube, does not match this right here, does not match this right here. They all three need to be exactly the same or it will not work. Now we're going to save this. Saving it will automatically push it to Unity. It's compiling C# scripts. Give that just a second. And now we have our script and we're going to grab it and drag it onto the cube. To know that that worked, we can click on the cube, go down, and you'll see the script on the inspector screen because we've added it. Right, just make that a little bit more organized. There's the script. Now that we have the script there, we can press play again. And we can move our cube around. Now, if you have adjusted the camera or moved it at a strange angle, the way that you're pushing the arrow keys might not necessarily link up with the direction the direction the cube moves. It might be flipped. So, because this code is moving stuff on the X and Y axis, so make sure it lines up. You can also jump with the space bar and move the cube around. If you want your cube to move faster or slower or jump higher, you can play with adjusting these three numbers. And then always make sure that you save to push the script. So if I move this to 20 and I save it, I allow it to compile. And I play it. Oops, I made it angry. Unity involves a little bit more patience than sometimes I have. And see, now it's jumping higher. Woo! So that's something really fun to play around with, and will give you a little bit of understanding of how all this is working. Now, we have a moving cube, we have an understanding of colliders, a basic understanding of the camera. Again, I want to make sure that everyone knows to keep things organized in folders and to keep their scenes organized as well. It stores, so if you want to play around with this later, you'll know how to, in case you don't want to work with cubes. So I've deleted the cube. I still have the ground. I'm going to go to the little resources page and click Unity Asset Store and 3D Assets. I want to look at characters. And I want to look at free things because I don't want to pay for them right now. And there is no shame in using assets. Mostly everybody does. A lot of the times I'll create a main character myself and then download stuff like trees to save myself some time, but you are all welcome to use all downloaded free assets from the store. This bear looks kind of interesting. Let's check it out. Ooh, Yeah, so this bear has animations. We're not going to use those, but we are going to use the model. I'm going to add this to my assets. Accept. Open Unity. Open Unity. Okay, now it's loaded. I've got this bear. Can download it. And this is the package manager. This is what will allow you to import things into Unity. Okay, press import once it's downloaded. And then this is going to give me a bunch of options, right? This bear has a lot to it. I don't necessarily know if I need all of it. I definitely don't. I don't need the animations. So I'm going to uncheck bear animations, bear icons. Actually, I'm just going to leave it for now, but you can sort out things so they'll download quicker. Okay, I'm going to let that import. Okay, so now that the bear has completely downloaded, I'm going to go into Assets. This folder is the folder that downloaded. Prefabs is usually where you'll find the completed thing and not just like individual pieces. I can drag the bear into my scene. Oh, look how cute he is. And I can then rotate him. I think I want him to be facing a different direction. Let's see. I think I just want it there. Yeah. Perfect. And I'm going to move the bear down just a little bit. Okay, so now I have a bear. We'll go over animations and stuff like that later, but for now, adorable bear. Make sure you have everything saved before you leave this if you want to keep it. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Please, if you have time, play around with Unity. The more you use it, the more you're going to be comfortable with it. It's one of those things that you have to do to get good at. All right, thanks. Bye.